Good morning
Good.
or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our August wastewater scan partner meeting. Happy August, everybody. Um, just a reminder, as always, of who we are. We're a national effort based at Stanford to build this national network using consistent methods to learn about the process and implementation of wastewater science. So I am Marlene from Emory, and then Allie, who's also on the call from Stanford. We are the program directors. Verily is our partner for laboratory analysis and other aspects of getting this testing done, and National League of Cities for capacity building. And then this call is targeted towards all of you, our partners in state and local public health and municipal and public works and wastewater officials who are really are, key partners in producing and using this data. So thank you for being here, and please continue. We do get updates, additional people. I know like who's responsible for what might change in your departments, or you might have more people. So send us emails if you want additional people on this list who are from your department. I don't know what word I'm trying to say there. Okay, so a quick program overview. So nothing has changed since our last call, but this is the wastewater scan network. We have 147 plants that are sampling in 40 states, and that represents about over 37 million people. And this is the map. So you can see quite the distribution across the country. But again, no changes from our last meeting. And here's what we're currently monitoring. There are also no changes here, but for a quick overview, our seasonal and emerging respiratory pathogens are SARS-CoV-2, influenza A and B, and several influenza A subtypes. RSV, human metapneumovirus, enterovirus D68, and then parvovirus is our most recent addition to that piece of the panel. Enteric viruses, we have norovirus, rotavirus, and human adenovirus group F. And then our kind of catch-all emerging and outbreak pathogens of concern, Candida auris, hepatitis A, measles, another recent addition, Mpox clade 1b and clade 2. And then we're sequencing SARS-CoV-2 from around 30 sites. These are our controls. We do QA, QC that every sample has to pass in order to have that data be published. Reminder of all of our protocols and publications. These are available on our website. We have a bunch of resources for you to dig in further. But these protocols, you can follow the QR code to look at some of our key protocols that we use for all the samples, and then the peer-reviewed publications that kind of provide the foundation for monitoring of these different pathogens in wastewater. We have, more than these, but these are some of the key pieces of evidence for scaling these pathogens. And then more on kind of recent things that we've added to this body of literature that our team has created. So some recently published papers on parvovirus, and Amanda's dropped the links to these in the chat so you can see more directly there or on our website. West Nile virus, and Alessandra's going to talk about some of this recent work a little bit later in the call. And then detection of H5 influenza and a modeling paper on potential inputs. That is a new paper that is just out led by Abby. And then a systematic review and meta-analysis of enteric virus shedding in human excretions. So a lot of recently published work to dig into, as well as a couple preprints, one on measles RNA and wastewater, and then detections of concentrations of rotavirus RNA in wastewater. You can go to this link, data.wastewaterscan.org/publications. Again, Amanda put it in the chat, where you can get an overview as well as like a short summary of the things that we've published, organized by topic and themes, and just with some blurbs to help you find kind of what you're most interested in, with links to the full papers. We also have FAQs and fact sheets and guidance documents linked on the website. So you can see here at the bottom of the contents. So there's kind of pathogen specific fact sheets and FAQs. If you have things that you would love to see added to this section, please send us an email and let us know. We want to make sure that we've got resources there for you and we make them easily accessible. So just shoot us an email if you think, wow, I really wish that I had my questions answered about X topic that's not on there, and we'll kind of put it in our queue. A quick reminder that there is a public health survey that went out on July 28th. So the utilities survey email has not gone out yet. So please look for that. But the state public health survey has gone out. So many of you have responded to that. Thank you so much for taking the time to fill it out. I want to remind everybody that the survey is anonymous. We are obviously not going to report who responded. We're also not reporting individual states. So when we summarize the results from that, we won't say, Georgia said blah, blah, blah. We will talk about things in a summarized way that allows us to make sure that we maintain anonymity while describing some of the needs, challenges, successes, et cetera, that have happened in wastewater monitoring. So we really appreciate state public health departments taking the time to respond to that. The survey takes about 20 to 25 minutes. If you have any questions about it, please email me or Kyler and we can help you out. But our deadline for that is next Friday, August 15th. We'll send out another reminder email on Monday. But again, thank you. A lot of you have already filled this out, so thank you so much. Okay, quick measles updates. So we have an assay for wild-type measles. We've talked about it before. The link is here. It is a new assay, and the protocol is now published on protocols.io, so you can see all the details on that. We've done testing in silico and in vitro for specificity, testing for sensitivity, testing on biobank samples. A lot of this is reported in that preprint, and then this is the probe and primer sequences for that assay. So you should have access to everything you might need to have everything you need to know about what assay we're running, but please let us know if you have questions about it. Quick timeline recap for what has happened so far in the measles testing rollout. So from May 5th to May 19th, we did pilot prospective testing at a small set of wastewater treatment plants and privately shared those results. As that went well, then the week of May 19th, we scaled the assay across all the WastewaterSCAN sites. The results were available via a staged website that was not public. And then June 2nd, that data was made public, and it's also available on the API for partners. So if you have the API access, you have that. If you don't have API access and you would like it, please send us an email. That API is for partners. And then on August 4th, which was Monday of this week. This feels like a long week. It was Monday of this week. We started on the data submission to CDC News, to 1CDP. So we sent a few emails kind of letting everybody know how that was going to happen and what the process was. And then that did start on the 4th. So hopefully if you have access to 1CDP, you should be able to see the results in there. And again, let us know if you're having any challenges with that. Well, let CDC know if you have any issues with 1CDP, but let us know if you have any questions about the a little bit about the oh, I've got an echo on somebody. Okay. Okay, so a little bit about the results so far. So we've had 15 sites across 12 states, a total of 39 samples, but 15 sites across 12 states that have had at least one positive measles detection since we started that prospective monitoring in mid-May. This is a quick rundown. We'll send these slides out in case you want to spend more time taking a closer look at this map and some of the information on cases that we've assembled here. But you can see that the red are sites where we have had a detection, at least one detection since May. And then the blue is where sites where we have not had any measles detections. The dark gray are states where we've had at least one measles detection, and then the light gray is where we have not. Some of those states are states where we don't have sites, right? But the light gray is where we have not yet had any measles detections in wastewater. And what we've seen generally is that there is a pattern of these detections happening and happening more frequently in areas where we have had confirmed cases as well. But I do want to emphasize that it's a very small, less than 1% proportion of all samples that have been tested for measles so far that have been positive. Again, 39 samples total that have had a detection. And a lot of these, most of them have been at relatively low concentration. So this is a pretty rare target in wastewater, but we are consistently finding that we're seeing detections, and very frequently those are in areas where there are, or soon after there was, a known measles case in the county. So we're continuing to track this and learn a lot about it. And we really appreciate responses from locations that have had detections and kind of sharing information and thinking this through with us. Amanda is still sending emails. So if someone gets a positive result, we will send a notification to everyone who we have as kind of our key contacts for that site, local and state. So if you are, we're making our best attempt to make sure all the right people are on those email lists, but we're always looking for email list updates. If you have those to send to us, please make sure that we have everybody on our list so that we can send those to the right place. But these are the results so far. And then here's a heat map of the positive measles detections. And so you can just see these are the different, we don't have the names of the sites on here, but what state they're in, and then over time. And so you can see that there have been a number of sites where we just have one kind of one-off detection. We know that the interesting thing about wastewater, one of many, is that it's capturing anybody who's in the area and not necessarily people who reside there or who would, have their case recorded in the local area. If someone's traveling through and they're shedding measles, they can still be sort of included in this outcome. And so we do see a lot of, one-off detections, but there are a couple cases, especially one site in California and one site in Michigan, where we've had more repeated or more consistent detections of measles over time. Here are the reference documents on measles specifically. So we have frequently asked questions, methods, and a lab protocol. And then there's also that preprint that's available. Okay, so a quick summary of other ongoing research. We just like to mention what topics we're kind of currently working on. So we have projects right now going on about Bordetella pertussis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, or Puche virus, and then also our viral metagenomic method development. So we will, those who are involved in pilots for these three organisms, you know who you are, and we've talked. For the kind of viral metagenomics, we're really excited about that, and we're going to be sharing more information and having some opportunities for kind of feedback also as we're developing our process for doing more viral metagenomics in wastewater and learning the best ways for us to generate and interpret that information that will be useful for public health. So look forward to that, but we will share a lot more information before anything gets kind of implemented more widely. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it over to Alessandra to talk about parvovirus and West Nile virus.
Perfect. Thanks, Marlene. So parvovirus B19 is a respiratory virus that's relatively mild, usually only infects children. So the reason we care, though, is that in both pregnant persons and the immunocompromised, it can lead to significant complications, including aplastic anemia, hydrops fetalis, and the loss and stillbirth. And the reason we started doing this is because in August of 2024, the CDC published a health alert saying there was increased activity of parvovirus B19 in certain areas within the United States. And I was interested in looking at whether any of those overlapped with our WastewaterSCAN sites. We were able to select 2 WastewaterSCAN sites in Texas where there was known to be significant activity of parvovirus B19, and we used an already developed assay and started measuring it in the wastewater. Now the graphs on the right, going from A to B to C, A shows us the number of parvovirus B19 cases in the county during the time period that we monitored. The green line instead shows us the number of hydrops fetalis cases, and both of them you can see increase significantly during that period. B and C, on the other hand, are the 2 wastewater treatment plants that covered that area, and you can see the increase in activity of parvovirus B19, including the fact that detections start a little earlier than cases do. So, from this, we found that they were both highly correlated to both cases and the maternal complications, and we've now added it to our nationwide monitoring, as there's not really a lot of case testing for parvovirus B19, and because it's so mild in children, it often goes undetected until you start seeing these extreme complications in pregnant persons. Can we go to the next slide, Marlene? And then for West Nile virus, we We've published about dengue virus and all of the detections we had in Miami. West Nile virus is another arbovirus that we were interested in. It's endemic to the United States, so there is a lot more of it. And we picked 5 wastewater treatment plants, 3 of which are known to have West Nile activity and 2 of which have no West Nile activity. We tested a total of over 600 samples, of which only 2% were positive, but all of the positives were in areas that we knew had a lot of West Nile activity. Not only this, but the amount of activity in the area or the amount of cases did correlate to how often we found West Nile virus RNA in wastewater. The graphs on the right show this with the open circles representing cases and the red circles representing our detections. Um, there's further development ongoing in this space of arboviruses, but for now, it's much more on the sentinel surveillance side, and perhaps seeing as the increasing ranges of West Nile continue to expand, whether it's going into new places. And I apologize, there's a typo in the bottom right. It's actually supposed to be Pier J 2025. And with that, I think we can go Amanda.
Thanks, Alessandro. Just as a reminder, everybody, we are going to be sending out these slides afterwards, so you'll have links to all the publications and the graphs that Alessandro just shared. I wanted to start before I got into this, just saying it's been great seeing everybody at all these different wastewater conferences over the last couple of months, whether it be at the WEF Summit in LA in June, and then the NACCHO conference in Anaheim, and then this week seeing a handful of you at the Houston and North Carolina COE conference. It's been great seeing you all. So I'm going to go over the current wastewater categories. Next slide. So just as a reminder, we developed this categorization system to look at levels and trends and frequency of detection to tell us what is happening in a community around disease circulation. So trends tell us whether things are high or whether things are changing, going up, down, or staying the same. Levels tell us whether cases are relatively high or low based on the last 365 days, which we break down into tertiles. And then frequency of detection is important for our rare targets. Next slide. So as a reminder, you can find this, oh, forward. One more. Okay. So we have 3 archetypes for our wastewater pathogens. So we have pathogens that are commonly detected. So we have one methodology we use to detect categories. Then we have seasonal pathogens, and we have pathogens that are not commonly detected. We are not currently calculating categories for any of the influenza markers or for parvovirus, rotavirus, or for adenovirus group F. For those last 3, we need a longer time series to figure out which archetype it makes the most sense to assign these pathogens for. Next slide. So I'm going to give a current overview of where we're at as of 9:20 a.m. Pacific time on today's date. So currently SARS-CoV-2 is in the medium category due to medium concentrations and no trend. We've been seeing a slow increase in concentrations across all US census regions since mid-June, and I'm going to have a couple more slides to go over this in depth. Influenza A, B, RSV, human metapneumovirus, and EVD68 are all in the low category due to no longer being in seasonal onset. For influenza A, we've had a 13% detection rate in the last 21 days, and we have 2 sites that are in seasonal onset, and these 2 sites have seen some pretty high concentrations of influenza A in the last month or so. So we're looking into that closer. EVD68, we've had an 8% detection rate, and we only have 1 site in seasonal onset still. Neurovirus, we are in the low category due to no trend and low concentrations. C. auris, we've only had 22 detections in the last 10 days, so it's in the low category, and those detections have been at sites across our network. Hepatitis A, we've had 34 positive detections in the last 10 days. Measles, as Marlene went over, we've had a handful of recent detections. So we've had 3 positive detections in the last 10 days, and those have been at 3 different sites. Mpox clade 1b, we haven't had any detections in the last 10 days. In Mpox clade 2, we've had 4 positive detections, and those detections have been across 3 different sites. Next slide. So here is a quick summary plot of the respiratory pathogens we monitor. It's the last 24 months, so 2 years. And so on the right side, you will see the different pathogens, and they each have their own scale on the y-axis there. For reference, the dashed orange line is where we were 365 days ago. So for that top plot, you can see we were at kind of our peak summer level for SARS-CoV-2 about a year ago, and where we are now is quite a bit lower, but slowly increasing. We haven't quite hit the same concentrations we saw during the winter peak yet, but we're going to continue to keep an eye on this. Influenza A, B, RSV were pretty much non-detect during this time last year, and that's the same for now. Human metapneumovirus concentrations were low a year ago, and they are now. And for EVD 68, we were not quite at the peak of what we saw last year, but we were slowly increasing at that point in time. And now, as I mentioned, we've mostly had non-detects. Next slide. So here's SARS-CoV-2. As I mentioned, we are in the medium category due to medium concentrations and no trend in the last 21 days. We've had a 97% detection rate in the last 21 days. In this plot, you can see the south, which is in this chartreuse color, has been in the higher concentrations we've seen since we've started to see this increase since mid-June. And it's right around the same level as the peak that the south had during the winter surge that we saw. And we're going to continue to keep an eye on this, especially as Marlene said, kids are going back to school across the country and people are coming back from summer travels. So we will continue to monitor. Next slide. And here is our aggregated sequencing plot. So this is from data across 30 sites that we do sequencing at. So as you can see in the far left, right bar, you can see that this orange color, which is XFG, is making up around 64% of the variants we're seeing, and MB.1.8.1, which is Nimbus, is only making it up about 9. During the spring, people talked a lot about how Nimbus was potentially going to surge and dominate what we were seeing, but we're actually seeing XFG as the dominant variant, and it's been that way for a while now. In the chat, I included a link so you can see this plot. Next slide. Parvovirus. So Alessandro gave a brief overview of this, but I wanted to show you, here is a handful of sites in the HHS Region 1, and you can see that there's been periodic detections across all of these sites. So a detect is in red, a non-detect is in blue, and you can see some sites have had more frequent detections than others. In the last 21 days, we've had a 19% detection rate. And lastly, 97% sites in our network have had at least one positive parvo detection since we started monitoring in May. And we are not currently calculating categories. Like I said, we need a longer time series of data before we feel comfortable doing this. But this is kind of a great way to see where things are at in your community in the heat chart view versus in the line chart view. Next slide. Rotavirus. So we had previously been monitoring rotavirus up until December of this past year when we added Mpox clade 1b into our pathogen panel. So we had this 6-month pause, which is what is represented by these dashed red lines. But as you can see, we saw some pretty high levels when we started monitoring again in May, and we've come down quite a bit since then. We've had a 90% detection rate in the last 21 days. Next slide. And that is it for our update right now on wastewater categories. As always, if you have questions, you can send an email to this listserv. It goes to Marlene, Allie, myself, and Stephen, and we will be able to answer any questions you have. Next slide. And we will have our next meeting a month from now on September 12th. And as always, at the end of the month, we will be sending out our monthly newsletter.